Hey, good evening, everyone. Hopefully you can hear us at this point. Thank you all for waiting. It's well over 2,000 of you now watching, so that's a presentation that we don't normally get that kind of participation. So thank you very much. And I'll start off the same way I did at the board meeting, by apologizing. Certainly this isn't how we'd want to hold this type of forum. We'd want to speak with you publicly. We'd want to be in the auditorium. We'd want to field your questions, but unfortunately that just isn't possible right now. So over the last several days, over 2,000 submissions have come in. Ms. Hines and her staff have taken those questions. They've broken them down, categorized them. We're going to try to get to as many key points and topics tonight as possible. And then we're going to take the balance of them and we're going to post them on a public FAQ that'll be up on our website. Obviously, we've spoken to hundreds of you, if not thousands, via email with your own specific questions. So certainly continue to reach out to building principals as we get closer to the start of school when you have a question that relates specifically to your child. But wherever we can help you, we certainly will. Ms. Hines is with me. Off camera, you can't see them, but we do have the rest of the cabinet here with us. Ms. Kristen Capel-Eden, our Assistant Superintendent for Personnel, is with us. Ms. Patty Trombetta, our Assistant Superintendent for Student Support and Administration, and also some of Ms. Hines' staff that she can introduce at this point.
Good evening, Sachem, and we are happy to have you on board with us tonight. We hope to be able to answer some of your critical questions that you have. And as Mr. O'Keefe said, I just want to give a hearty thank to Ms. O'Doherty and Ms. Moran. They are our instructional support directors, and they helped us for the past few days to cull through all the questions and be prepared for tonight. And they will be the people who are asking us all of your alternate questions back and forth. Before we do start, though, we'd like to just give you a couple of updates that have happened over the course of the past few days. Happily, we have received our final allocation for our UPK program. We are starting to work with our principals in order to make sure that we have the space and everything ready to go for those classes. As soon as we know a little bit more information, because as you can understand, with this last minute message that we received, we just want to make sure that before we roll it out to the community, we have all details in place. Next, we also have gotten quite a bit of feedback, as you can imagine, about the remote learning for our AB day at the secondary level. And because of that, we have started to work with the SCTA in order to move forward in considering bringing live streaming to our classrooms to ensure that we have daily instruction that is occurring for our students. And as soon as we are able to, again, continue that conversation and in more detail, we will be able to bring it forth. So whenever you're ready, Mr. O'Doherty, Ms. Moran.
All right. So now we'll get to some of your questions.
If you could just clarify a little bit about the AB day schedule for our middle school and high school students.
Sure. So originally, as we had said prior to the announcement that we just made, the AB schedule was supposed to be for our middle school and our high school students alternating. This is a decision that was a hard one for us. As you know, given the visual that we handed out and sent to everybody a little over a month ago, we had were asking and were rooting for a full return. This is when we were hopeful that we were going to be able to conduct our classrooms, set them up with 3 feet in distancing. We now know that that will be 6 feet. And so at the elementary buildings, and similarly, we did the same thing at our secondary buildings. We walked every classroom and measured all of the desks. And it was realized very quickly at the secondary level that we were not going to be able to bring back all of our students at once. We are looking at numbers anywhere from 1,800 in our middle schools to almost 2,400 at our high schools. And those numbers were quite large in order for us to find alternate spaces to be able to break up the classes in half. And so we did move, like similarly most school districts, to moving to an AB schedule. So again, that is a 2 to 3 day alternate schedule, depending on whether your child is running an A or a B schedule. Now, again, with the live streaming, even though your child may physically not be here each day, should we be able to move forward with that, the teacher would be teaching their daily lessons as they would, only each child, and depending on their schedule, would be home and or in school. If we are not able to realize that, then our students would still, no matter what, all of our students K-12, every teacher in our school district will be running a Google Classroom, and all lessons each day will be posted, and or on Monday for the full week will be posted for the full year's curriculum for however long we are in our pandemic months. So if we have to run with our original AB model, then our teachers would be teaching lessons where they would be alternating back and forth, highlighting big ideas, and also ensuring that common lessons are shared so that the students who come in each day are receiving these same material.
We understand that these are difficult decisions for parents to make. If a parent chooses remote learning for their child or their children, but then decides that they would like their child to return to school, is that an option for parents? Can the child return to school for remote learning during the course of the school year?
So, and this is a great question, because I know this was, a question that many parents, when they read our survey, felt that it was a little harsh, the measures that we had to take in the beginning to ensure that we had accurate numbers for how many students were truly looking to do remote learning. And please understand that we had to take that measure because we are so large. We really needed to make sure that we could match up the amount of students that were in fact looking to remain remote learning in conjunction with any staff members that would be looking for accommodations that might mean that they would be doing remote teaching. As of today, the numbers that we are seeing are at about 5% of our students district-wide and about 10% of our teachers district-wide. And so that's not without culling through and ensuring that everybody has a place, and or the accommodation for a staff member would truly mean remaining home as a remote learner. With those numbers, we do feel hopeful that once the school year is underway, that we would be able to offer more choice and for students to flexibly go back and forth should there be an outlier case where really that is needed for the student.
Along those same lines, so parents can really have the opportunity to make a good choice for their child, what would remote learning look like?
So as we just said, remote learning in the traditional, how we first had shared, would have been the child or the student is in class receiving live teaching. They would go home at the end of the day with materials for the remaining of that lesson, as well as homework and some pre-teaching. And then they would return the following day or the day after to, again, experience live teaching. Now, if we're doing live streaming, this would be uninterrupted. So this would be a teacher live streaming through the classroom. Again, this is not, though, distance learning. This is not going to be a teacher who is doing a Google Classroom and then students are all attached to it. This is more the teachers in the classroom. We're slotting our students into the schedule that they would be receiving normally. And if they were at home, they're able to view the teaching that is going on. The camera would be focused or pointed at the front board, where the teacher would, again, if they felt comfortable, shared their view and or the view of the board. And so I think, again, just giving us a couple of more days, we'll be able to accurately tell you which model it will be. But no matter what, on Google Classroom, in either model, the curriculum is delivered every day, uninterrupted for the full year in whatever months that we're out.
If family chooses remote learning for their child, will they have the opportunity to be assigned to one teacher or a cluster of teachers? Would they have the opportunity to meet that person? And would they have access to textbooks or other learning materials?
So let's talk first about the textbooks. We envision that any child, student that is going into remote learning, that we would have some sort of a pickup day at each area. So that we can ensure that if there were any textbooks that we had to hand out, just being mindful that we are minimally handing out textbooks that would be shared for students, but we would be doing that. Any workbooks, any guided reading books, any of those matters. In terms of meeting your teacher, we are still, as I said before, culling through the numbers of how many students are looking to remain home on remote learning, and also looking to see what staff members are going to be conducting remote learning for us. And so at that time, once we're kind of vetted out, we know everything that is going on, we'll be able to share with every student the teachers that they will be seeing. It may be one teacher, it may be a cadre of teachers. On the elementary level, we are, to the best of our ability, looking to open up at the very least a grade level Google Classroom so that the students can spend minimal time with the teacher each day, an hour or so, being able to interact on their grade level standards and materials.
Thank you. Can you speak a little bit about the protocol for when there's a positive case of COVID in any of the schools or on any of the buses?
Well, again, we're not medical experts, so we do rely on our resident medical experts, our nursing staff, and they've been guiding us through the whole summer, even with our current SESI program. We rely completely on the Suffolk County Department of Health for the direction of how to handle each case. So if in a particular situation, let's say we have a student that tests positive, we alert the Suffolk County Department of Health, or possibly they're alerting us that they've learned of this case. So it depends on who gets the information first. If we're hearing it from them, by then they'll also probably likely have determined through contact tracing who else possibly within that child's grouping or classroom needs to be notified as well, because we're not in charge of determining quarantining or who needs to be held out of school or held separately or sent for testing. That's all done through Department of Health. Now, I can imagine in the early days, if there are some outbreaks throughout Suffolk County, the Department of Health could get overwhelmed. So we'll certainly do our best working with our nurses, working with our medical director. So even if we're not getting the quick answers that we need, we'll look to those medical experts to help guide us to determine what's the best course of action until we actually receive it. Certainly, if somebody is positive, that person has 10 days, which they have to quarantine. Now, if that person was in close contact with somebody else, and the definition of close contact has now changed a few times. The most recent definition is 10 minutes or more, less than 6 feet without masks. So we're hoping with our protocols of having masks on everyone, it'll limit the possibility of these type of scenarios happening. But let's say there was a particular circumstance where it was determined that that person was deemed to be in close proximity. Then we alert those families that possibly these children need to be brought to their pediatrician and tested. And then the protocols from there, again, are driven by the contact tracers, who needs to either be quarantined or kept back until we determine that they don't have a fever or any other symptoms for the requisite number of days.
Thank you. Can you elaborate on how masks will be worn and how that will be enforced in the hallways and schools and possibly on the buses as well?
Yeah, I guess either of us can work on that. Our policy is that all students, all staff will wear masks. And when students, and I think this is a later question that we might even touch on, are seated in a classroom and receiving direct instruction, or if they're eating their lunch, let's say, there is the possibility for those mask breaks. But the general policy is masks will be worn at all times, whether it's in the building, in the hallways, on the bus, etc.
I know we spoke about it at the Board of Education meeting, and certainly it's in our plan. And we would hope that if anybody has not seen the plan that we sent out last Friday, you may just want to revisit it, as most of this information is also in there as well. But if a child has any medical issues, mental health issues, or is a student with disabilities, they are also entitled to ask for stay away from masks. However, though, as Mr. O'Keefe said, we would be encouraging our staff and our students all to be wearing masks at all time, but that does not to say that if a child felt uncomfortable, needed a mask break, that could not occur during instructional time. As far as the hallways go, those are areas that we would expect that our students would be wearing that. Any of those large common areas, our hallways, as well as our floors, are all being marked off to ensure flow and to make sure that students are not congregating together or transporting in and out of our hallways or in or out of our entrances at the same time. So I know we'll talk about this a little bit later on, but staggered times that they come off the bus, staggered times that they go back on the bus, etc., recess, lunch, these are all opportunities and times when children will see various visuals and signs in order to ensure flow.
And actually, if you refer to the website, go to the district tab and you go to reentry, there's actually a good FAQ there on masks that's specifically designed for parents to read.
Yeah, and you know what, John, we actually too on our on the plan that we shared on Friday, we did share some visuals for families to see that you can note are being hung up around our buildings.
Thank you. Along those same lines, will students be expected to bring a mask to school every day? And will the schools be able to provide masks, face shields, gloves, or hand sanitizer?
So yes, we are expecting, just like if a child or a parent goes out anywhere right now, they're expected to bring a mask. We do have masks for any breakage or anybody that might have forgotten, but we would hope that at the time of them going on the bus that would have been avoided. We also are providing in each classroom materials for any cleaning off should a teacher or a student wish to do so. However, since a child will be at their own desk, eating at their own desk, especially on the elementary level, that is not necessarily needed. And as well as face shields are being provided for all of our teaching staff to ensure double safety in terms of should they need to relinquish their masks in order, especially like speech services and alike. And then, as well as any other materials that we've ordered. John, if you want to elaborate on the PPE materials.
Yeah, I think that it may even be a later question, so I don't want to sidetrack us from what we're working on.
Thank you. So thinking about our in-person learners, both students and the staff that will be coming in, will the students have their temperatures checked each day at school, and how will we be monitoring students?
I mean, the protocol in general, and we've spoken about this several times now, but certainly we'll send out more information to families as we get closer to the start of school. The primary mechanism for doing the health check each morning will be the family. We'll expect the family to do a quick health survey, and that survey was shared, I believe, via Remind by Ms. Hines several days ago, just to give you an idea, what it looks like. So you'll be taking the temperature at home, asking a couple of questions. Have you been in close contact with somebody who has had COVID, et cetera? Have you traveled to a state that's possibly on the list? Things of that nature. That information will be collected each morning. And then as the students arrive in the building, we'll compare to which students that should be in the building for the day against the attendance that we have received and cross-check the data to confirm that everyone has fulfilled the obligation of reporting their temperature and health. If we do get outliers, those students will be sent down to the nurse's office. We'll do a health screening there. Should a child, test with a high fever, or if there's any questions that are answered that could be suspect, that child will be isolated for that period of time. We'll contact the parent, maybe verify some information. Maybe information we have isn't completely accurate. If everything is fine, the child will return to class. If there are concerns, then the child would be requested to be picked up to go home.
Can you tell us a little bit about what the district will be doing to assure proper ventilation and filters in the buildings?
Sure. And this is actually something that the governor spoke about a couple of weeks ago, I guess now, when he was first talking about reopening malls that caused quite a bit of stir. He unfortunately and mistakenly thought that school buildings are built similar to malls in which they have centralized HVAC systems. School buildings are not. Not to go into all the technical details, and I'm certainly not an HVAC expert, but school classrooms have what's known as a univent, basically a device that takes the classroom air and draws it into the base of it through a filter. It also takes outside air and draws it in, and then draws it through a filter. And then if it's obviously the winter, it would heat it and would push it back into the room. So there's always a positive pressure with the addition of outside air, as long as the outside temperature is above freezing. To relieve that basically high pressure in the room, the air is drawn through vents that are in the hallway up through exhaust fans and out of the building. So it's a constant flow of air from the classroom wall, through the classroom, out the classroom door, and up and throughout the building. One of the concerns we heard, and not to go off topic, but people heard us talking about having doors open. We are not having outside doors to the school open. That was misinterpreted. We're just talking about keeping classroom doors open. That way it'll maximize airflow from the classroom through the hallway, through the rest of the building. As for the filters themselves, we do have buildings that age as old as 95 years old. Waverly is 95 now, but the average age of our buildings is in their 60s. Many of these units are original or many decades old at their best. They weren't designed for HEPA filtration. The current filters that the units were built for were actually just the same paper style 1-inch filter that you would have in your home. My director of facilities is working with our suppliers we can get MERV 8s for them. We're trying to upgrade to MERV 13s. Again, I'm not an expert on what those different levels of filtration are, but the higher the number, the highest number I believe is 16, the finer the filtration. So we're trying to outfit every room possible with MERV 13s. We're doing that in any of our air handlers in our buildings, or in areas, certain areas like the auditoriums in the high schools have air conditioning. Those we can add the higher level filtration. But the classrooms, we're doing our best to get it to that high, at least an 8, if not a 13, increase the airflow and increase the exhaust output to give a natural flow. Certainly, if the weather's nice, we're going to open the windows. Certainly, if a child has an IEP that requires air conditioning, that will be taken into consideration. If additional filtration is needed in that type of classrooms, we do have standalone units for that type of purpose.
Thank you. If parents wish to send their child in with, say, wipes or their own hand sanitizer, is that permitted? And would they be able to use those to clean off their own desks or seats however they wish? And will students be sharing materials, learning materials?
Doing the
So
learning materials.
I'll answer the first one. Learning materials, no. We will not be expecting our students to share learning materials. Our departments where we know that materials need to be had by the students, so math manipulatives, art supplies, etc., those are being purchased at a quantity where we will be able to break them up into individual bags for our students. We are also asking that all parents, of course, as you normally do, we're trying to minimize the amount of materials that have to come in. But again, just being mindful that the students may not share, so ensuring that they have plenty of writing utensils, etc. And those sample classroom lists will come home as they always do. In terms of, wipes and all of those types of things, at the middle school, high school level, that's a little bit different than elementary. Elementary does tend to, send in things like baby wipes, et cetera, et cetera. And of course, any parent may do so. In terms of wiping their own items down, of course, they may, if they wish to, but we certainly will not be mandating our students to wipe down anything on their seats and desks, and especially at the elementary level, because they'll be eating and primarily working from there. John, I don't know if you want to add anything on.
I think you got the other half of the question.
Okay.
Thank you.
Many parents are trying to decide about sending their students on school buses. Can you tell us a little bit about the bus procedures and protocols?
That's another tough one, and we spoke about it at the forum. We've touched on it a couple of times. The survey we sent to the families a couple of weeks ago came back stating that about 65% of the families who were sending their children to district for education would look to use those buses. Now that we'll get past this process, let's wait for the survey to close tomorrow for the remote learning. Later in the week, let's send out another survey. Let's try to fine tune that number. Based on those initial numbers and the fact that secondary is going to be an A day, B day, just naturally the way the process is going to work, I think you're going to be down nearly 50% on most buses. Normally we route our buses at about 50 students. They are 66 passenger, but we route them around 50. We're going to try to keep the routing to 44 and then hoping for half, which would be one child per seat. Students will be required to wear their masks. Obviously, we have in-district transportation as well as transportation provided by our contractor, whether it be our buses or their buses. Each day, those buses will go through a disinfecting routine. High-touch surfaces will be sprayed down, things of that nature, just as the classroom surfaces and the cafeteria surfaces will be. So once we get a finer count on the number of students, we can let families know how many kids will be on a bus, and that may help guide them to decide, maybe for the first few weeks until we see how this goes, maybe it is better that I drive them in. So we'll try to get you that information as quickly as possible, and that way to help you make the decision.
Thank you. Switching gears to orientation, can you elaborate on the district's plans for orientation for students for transitioning grades such as kindergarten, middle school, and high school as well?
Yes, thank you. So for all transition periods, all transition grades, we are going to be offering some sort of like a small virtual experience just to welcome the students in. But upon the first days of school, each school will break up their normal orientation type of activities into smaller groups. And even at the high school and the middle school, they'll be welcoming those 6th grade and 9th grade students in a little bit earlier so they can tour the buildings. This obviously is a little bit of a different approach to what we've done in the past, but we do think that it's very important that our students coming in those transition years do have some experience before they enter into the building. Kindergarten last year received quite quite a beautiful presentation from each school, just welcoming them, sharing some things that are going on into the building. And again, we would just continue with that experience as they come in.
Thank you. Can you talk a little bit about what a middle school or a high school student's schedule will look like?
Sure. Middle school and high school schedule will be exactly the same as it is right now. We are not looking to change any parameters around the schedule. Again, we just have to wait until we finalize staffing and the numbers of students in remote in order to place students into their schedules. And we know that that's hard, right? We're looking for schedules now ASAP as families, and I absolutely get it. But just give us a little bit of time and they will be out. The reason why we are looking to just host a traditional schedule, again, if we're able to move forward as we work towards live streaming, a student would just run their schedule as they normally do. And God forbid we ever have an opportunity where we're told that we have to close for a number of weeks for distance learning. We would, again, continue to run the same schedule, but shortened. So it would be about 2.5 hours of a shortened period day. And we feel like that's consistent for the students. It's not confusing, and the teachers don't have to move. Student schedules don't have to move.
Thank you. Can you explain a little bit more about how AIS support services will be handled at both the elementary and the secondary levels?
Sure. So AIS at elementary and at the secondary levels are a little bit of two different programs. So at the middle school level, it's more of like an additional support, help with comprehension or math skills, but it's not necessarily based on individualized level. And those are classes that kids are put into in their schedule. And so because we're running full schedules, those students will continue to have an additional teacher for AIS. On the elementary level, academic intervention services actually starts in the classroom. And when a student is brought up to what we call an IST, an instructional support team, and that is with the notion that the child is having difficulties. And so the first run is always to ensure that the classroom teacher is providing additional guided reading and or math support to help that student. And so that would be our first run that we have always done and we will continue to do now. And should we need to move forward with any additional services, then again, we would look to support that teacher further in making sure that they have additional materials and additional opportunities for the students to work in small group instruction in their classroom.
Thank you. Shifting gears just to elementary at the moment, will elementary students be staying in their own classrooms all day? Will they have the opportunity to move to other places in the building or outside? And will they be eating lunch in the classroom? And will hot lunch be served?
Yeah. So hot lunch, John. Why don't you start with hot lunch first?
Hot lunch we're still
serving
working
it.
on. There'll certainly be lunch opportunities every day for children. Once we finalize what the classes look like, Ms. Zdenek, our Director of Food Services, will meet with each principal and we'll work out what those logistics look like, because in some buildings, there may be some capacity to have X number of children in the cafeteria while others are in the classrooms. So obviously then the food will either need to be transported to them, or we'll have to have some orderly fashion for the children to come down, pick up their lunch and return to the classroom. I mean, this morning we had conversations about students that have breakfast with us. Breakfast might be the type of scenario where as they're entering the building, whether it be off the bus, or even a walker or parent drop off, that we have sort of a grab and go type setup where they pick those breakfasts up and bring them back to the classroom and then eat them as the class day begins. Certainly the number of options will be limited, especially at the secondary level. I would imagine that at the elementary level, we'll have one or two primary options each day. There are other alternatives, obviously, each day if there's a particular child that can't eat, what's already been offered on the menu, or if they have a preference. But certainly at the secondary level, we're not going to be able to have the salad bars and the open deli sandwiches and things of that nature. It might be somewhat restricted. I mean, some things might be able to be pre-made and ready for them for grab and go, but we'll have to scale back it a little bit just to keep the flow of students going and not have people congregating and standing in line.
Okay, so in terms of elementary students in their classrooms all day, right? Yes. Okay. So as Mr. O'Keefe had said, right now our Our intention is to start school where our elementary students would be in their classroom for a majority of their time, X amount, obviously barring lunch and recess, where they would have an opportunity to be outside of their classroom and enjoy with their fellow classmates 6 feet apart and or wearing a mask if they're outside together. Once school is underway and we can kind of see all the kinks and the bumps in the road, we would be looking to rotate our cafeterias or other large areas where we're not holding class to offer different opportunities, whether it's some classes get to visit the cafeteria for lunch in a particular day on a rotational basis, or they're able to visit the gym during inclement weather during recess. Obviously, we know that it's going to be hard for our little guys and gals to be in their classroom all day long, but we will also in between offer, mask breaks as well during instructional times or any other times that we're able to bring the students out. Certainly, we are also encouraging our teachers to do outdoor teaching. We did remove quite a bit of furniture that we will be looking to, if not place away from when we all come back full time, but different areas outside, and the teachers are always free to be outside as well with their class.
Thank you. Can you talk a little bit about extra help and how clubs will be scheduled this year?
Sure. So clubs is definitely a challenging question for us. We want to be able to offer clubs to our students. And right now we do have all clubs set and ready to go, but virtually is what we will be looking to do in terms of that. And so we need to work with our club leaders and our administrators to find out which clubs are definitely going to be able to operate virtually and which ones might be a little bit more difficult for that to happen. And so thinking out of the box, can we still run them if we think about different types of ways? But no matter what, we are incorporating a new platform software called Passport for Good. And this is a software that will be focusing on just gathering all of the different activities, attendance, community service hours, everything for a club. But please know that clubs are definitely, once school is over at their secondary buildings, all students will be asked to return home. So the clubs will not be happening after school. But again, we're looking to work to ensure if there's any way that we can run our club successfully virtually, that is what our intention is. As far as extra help, that would be the same thing. While we can't stay after, we will be looking for our teachers to host extra help, hours on their Google Classroom via Google Meet. And this is something, again, that we're working with our teachers on to ensure that is offered as students need it.
Thank you. Can you talk a little bit about what arrangements will be made for high school students on a music track that will need to participate in performance groups?
Sure. So this I think everybody knows how proud we are of our tremendous music program that we have, along with all of our other programs. But for music, this is the hardest hit, along with sports, in our estimation, because there is so many parameters around what we're able to do musically with the students. 12 feet for any choral or wind. So that's a hard hit for us. So on Monday, we will be meeting with our music department to talk about all the different music and choral groups, and looking again for ways that we can still host those programs, but within the confines of the 12 feet spacing. Anything that is not, so that would be like our general band, lessons can still be conducted. General music will still be conducted. We, again, have spaced out parameters within the building so that lessons can be held, ensuring that there is 6 feet spacing for our students. But our intention is to keep the integrity of our music program and to find ways that we're able to host that. We probably will not be hosting large venue concerts. I'm sure everybody understands why that will not occur, but that does not mean that we will not be doing something along those lines with those groups. So just kind of keep posted for that. As Mr. O'Keefe said, we are going to be putting out an FAQ document for the district with all such types of questions, and we will add those things on like music.
Thank you. Can you share with us a little bit more about how IEP services will be provided to both our in-person and our remote learners?
Sure. So IEP, goals will still obviously be implemented as they should. So depending on the level of the student and whether they be secondary or the elementary level, they would still have a reporting teacher. They would still have teachers for their particular services with some live integration depending on those services. So I don't want any students or families to think that we will not be honoring what's on the IEP. Again, it's just needing a little bit of time before we can send out schedules and letting you know what teachers are going to be addressing what for your child.
Along those same lines, can you explain a little bit about how speech services will be provided, whether they would be push-in or pull-out, and will masks be required during those sessions?
So speech is unlike AIS, speech is an IEP-driven service. So children will receive those services as noted on their IEP. So it's not up to us whether or not we want to do push-in or pull-out is what is required for the child. So again, reappropriating space in our buildings. If your child is in a pull-out group service, they will still receive that, but it will be in a larger venue classroom than what they might have been used to just ensure that there's flow for the student. The speech teacher, as well as the students, again, if not 6 feet, will be wearing their mask, but the speech teachers, we are providing face shields and clear masks for any of our speech teachers and the like. And that would be the same for any of our special class students, anything along those lines.
Thank you. Can you elaborate more on the AB day schedule? And also, will students still have elective classes?
So I think we talked a lot about the AB, but if there's anything more specific, I'm happy to talk about it. But elective classes, yes, we're looking to run our schedules just as we always have, right? So that would include the robust electives that we generally offer. Again, thinking about if calling through the numbers of staff members that we have that may be looking to learn remotely, that could affect the types of electives, but we just don't even want to go there yet because right now we're looking to just move forward as we always do in a traditional year with our classes. I also just want to make mention too, because I think as we talk about the bus and we talk about all the different things that are happening in the classrooms, I don't want any incoming kindergarten or younger grade parents or families to think that their children are coming into schools and their children aren't going to feel warm or welcomed. Our kindergarten teachers, all of those different things, it's a little scary for a child to get on the bus for the first time or to come into a classroom for the first time. And we are working really hard with our staff, our administrators, our teachers, to make sure that it is still a warm and welcoming and inviting environment. The precautions that we have to take are the precautions that we have to take, but that doesn't take away the love and the care that we have for our students as they enter the building. So at any time that a parent or a staff member feels a little bit uneasy about something, again, as you always have, just contact us and we will be able to assure you that your child is in safe and good hands.
Thank you. With the secondary students, will the students have access to their lockers, and will that be limited in any way?
Sure. So we did discuss that at the Board of Education meeting on Wednesday, which feels like a lifetime ago. So we are looking to limit the amount of times that students go to the locker, but that doesn't necessarily mean that if a child needs to go to their locker, we would prohibit them from that. Again, we're just looking for ways to just minimize interaction and too much flow in the hallways. We're asking that students, and when those building lists come out, and you should know too that our administrators at the elementary, middle school, and high school levels are creating their own FAQ, so you can just look a little bit deeper into the details of what it would be like for your child in the building, as John and I are creating more of like a district view for you. The lockers are going to be for more as you come in, drop your outerwear, any materials that you have, and then coming back again in the PM. We're also going to limit the amount of items that we typically ask a student to bring in so that students aren't stressed and don't feel like they have to hold a million things throughout the day. I can't speak to backpacks or string bags because that's really the consensus of the building. But I will say, though, that if a child really truly feels like they need to go back to their locker, we certainly would not prohibit that at all.
And I just think it's important for parents to understand that, again, we're just giving district-wide recommendations. Building principals will then look at their building and determine what works best for them, because certainly a procedure that'll work at East is not necessarily going to work at Samoset. So each of those will be slightly differently, but children will have the opportunity, come in the morning, they've got their jacket, maybe they brought their lunch, they'll be able to place it in that locker, lock it up, and then stop back later in the day to pick those things up. The fact that lockers are usually accessed during passing, which is 4 minutes. No child is typically at a locker more than 30 seconds to a minute. So it's not like anyone, yes, there are children in the hallway, but we're very mindful of keeping people under that 10-minute limit in close proximity to each other.
Thank you. Can you share with us the plans for attendance and grading this year?
Yes, so we will be looking to bring back grading. We know that that's very important to our students and to our families, and rightly so. It's a lot of hard work that goes into schooling every day. In the pandemic months, it was very challenging for us to keep going with grades because we knew there were so many outliers between parents having to all of a sudden work from home, students having to school from home. It was very hard. But now moving into the school year, we are prepared for distance learning, remote learning, and traditional in-person teaching. And so we expect that our curriculum is taught throughout the year, and so we would be assessing students accordingly. Attendance is imperative, no matter whether you're choosing remote or you're choosing in person. And then certainly if we all have to go to distance learning, attendance is imperative. You must attend in order to be able to experience what goes on in school every day. And then as far as grading goes, again, just going back to that is really imperative, obviously at the high school level for transcripts and moving forward, but also just so that students know it is going to be a little bit of a different year and all your hard work does pay off, putting in that effort, yielding those grades you want.
Thank you. In regard to state tests and Regents exams for this upcoming year, if students are on remote learning, will they still have the opportunity to take these tests?
Yes. So all students, even if you're homeschooled, you have the opportunity to take any state assessments. But for us, because you would be considered still a Sachem student in remote, whereas in homeschooling, that is a deregistration of your child, and you're in charge of the educational plan that you submit to us for your home. But if you're in remote learning, you're still considered a Sachem student. You're still following all of our curriculum and assessments that we have. I will say, though, if I was a betting person, I think just like this past year, we will probably see some moratoriums from the state where we may look to have cancellation of state assessments and or choice for those students that look to take it, but then have some choice around whether or not they want to retake it or keep the grade. And the reason why I say this is because when you look at science lab hours, for example, they are pretty strict. And this year they are being a little bit more flexible in terms of what you can do virtually versus seat time. So I think the state is very mindful, certainly with the appointment of Ms. Rosa now, that I think that we'll probably see a little bit more flexibility about state assessments. And as soon as we know, we will be sharing that with all of you as community members and students.
Thank you. Is there any update on fall athletics?
So at this time, as you know, the extension has been to September 21st. We are fortunate here. Ms. Trombetta actually sits on the section board. And so she has first wing answers to all the things that, go on in terms of athletics, and along with Mr. Butel and Ms. McEntee. And we now know that athletics is being pushed to the spring session where there will be 3 separate seasons, right? Is that what it is, Ms. Trombetta?
It's not
Oh, not
official
official
yet.
yet.
Yeah,
Oh,
we're still
okay.
paused to September
That's the talk.
21st, but that is the talk. And then obviously watching what our colleges are doing with canceling the fall season. But nothing's been official yet on a cancellation, but it is a possibility based on what we're seeing elsewhere.
So there you go.
For students who choose remote learning at the high school, but they also attend a CTE program at BOCES, what will be the arrangements or busing? What are the possibilities for that situation?
Yeah, this is definitely a question that we've gotten. And Mr. O'Keefe with Mr. Cervone is looking at our transportation routes. But yes, our CTE programs, we learned about a week and a half ago that BOCES is bringing back all of the students daily for those children who attend their CTE programs there in their buildings. So those children have the opportunity to come, whether it be in the morning or the afternoon for that program. And depending on what their schedule is, that's why we wrote in the plan, we may need to ask that parents and or other family members bring the students back or forth from that, but a bus will go from our schools to BOCES. I don't know, Mr. O'Keefe, if you want to talk a little bit about
Yeah,
what
and
you
then
guys are trying to
and
work
certainly
on.
the bus will take the child from our building to BOCES and from BOCES back to our building. What I need to figure out once I determine what the utilization of the buses is after we survey is, do I have the available fleet capacity on a day where a child is on their B day or their off day to pick that child up to bring them in to get them to school? Or does the parent have to figure out how to get them here? And also on the back end of that, let's say they're in an AM BOCES program, they get dropped off in the middle of the day. Do I have fleet availability where I can it might be like a late bus where, the bus is taking a long route through the whole district. Maybe I don't have as much fleet available, to provide normal service to that neighborhood. But I hope to be able to find a way to get those children home and not burden the families. It might be something that takes the first week or two of school to sort out to get it exactly right. A lot of these things, we can put it on paper. And I think one of the common themes you've heard this evening is, things have changed even from the last time you tuned in and watched us from the board meeting. We are listening to all of your emails. We are taking all the recommendations. We're going back to our team. We sit with our administrators, the teachers, the staff, and we try to make changes on the fly. We can put these plans into place. None of them are going to be perfect. We're going to do the best we can with what we have. But once we start the day and start the school year, and we can start to see how the flow works and what works, what doesn't work, we're going to keep changing this. It's never going to be perfect. We're all back to where we want to be, but we're going to do the best we can with what we have. So I may have some challenges getting students to and from BOCES if they're on their off day at home. I'm certainly going to put in all the effort possible to see if I can, free up, whether it's our own fleet or the contractor's fleet based on availability, to make that child get part of a run, or maybe we loop them into an existing route if there's low utilization on a particular route. But whatever it takes, we're going to try to do our best to sort it out so that everyone has a bus that deserves one.
Thank you. Will there be an opportunity for working families to have before and after care at elementary as well as middle schools?
So our childcare has not changed at our elementary schools. We continue to work with Scope, who also runs our UPK program. Building principals are working with Scope leaders to just, ensure proper spacing for before and after care. In terms of childcare for the middle school and high school, we don't typically offer that, given the age. However, we do know that it is a hardship for our sixth grade students. And at this time, we are not offering that, not because we don't want to, but because we just have not done so in the past. But we are looking for opportunities should the numbers reveal itself in the remote learning, where we might be able to bring back those sixth grade students full time.
You spoke earlier a little bit about full distance learning if the governor was to shut us down again. You mentioned 2.5 hours of instruction per day. Can you talk a little bit about what that would look like at an elementary level versus a secondary level?
Sure. So at the secondary level, it's probably the easiest. It will be a shortened period day, so about 20, 25 minutes. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but so the child would start their day just like they normally do, and they would run each period on their Google Classroom, Google Meet with their teachers, so live daily instruction for each period. And that could include some videos, things like that. On the elementary level, again, it is 2.5 hours. And depending on the grade level, we certainly would not foresee a kindergartner sitting in front of their teacher for 2.5 hours straight. So that might mean a little bit of some live teaching time in the morning and then check in the afternoon. And we would look to preface an ELA and a math lesson and some sort of like a morning opener. So I hope that answers your question. I just have a couple of things I'm not sure were addressed in some of the questions, and I just wanted to make sure, as Mr. O'Keefe said, we do get quite a bunch of emails, and certainly our apologies if we're not able to get to everyone in a timely fashion, but we do go down the list as quickly as we can, and I've even apologized for writing people very late at night just to make sure that I answer them. But the ICT model, I know that that is something that is a really sore spot for families, and I certainly understand it as my own child is in an ICT program. And it is challenging to think that they would be on an AB schedule. So that was a major driving force for us in terms of asking for live streaming at the secondary buildings, because we did want to make sure that those students did not have uninterrupted live streaming services or direct teaching each day. And again, the live streaming is certainly not going to take the place of if they're in the classroom, but at least they're able to hear their students. And that would be for any student. But I did want to address our families and letting them know that we've heard you and we're working on that. And we hope to be able to provide that along with all the materials that would be loaded on daily in their Google Classroom and any modifications that would be made for their lead teacher. And I think the last thing is just our devices. I know that we get a lot of questions about how many devices we're going to be able to loan out to families and to students. And if you remember, in the beginning of the pandemic, we deployed as many devices as we had here in the district for consumption, and we gave out one at least to every family that said that they had no technology at all in their homes. We will look to revisit those numbers in those families and start contacting any families that still look like they might be in need. We are in the middle of purchasing more of a quantity of Chromebooks, but if you've watched the news over the past day or two, unfortunately, Chromebooks are something, along with other devices, that are really challenging for school districts to get. So please just be patient. We know this. We're also looking to contract with our local BOCES to see if there's opportunities to offer Wi-Fi for families that might not have it. But I do want to preface, if you are a family who may not be able to provide devices, should we not be able to, or Wi-Fi, remote learning may be a difficulty for you, but please contact us if you strongly feel that that's needed for your family, and we will work to get exactly what you need to the best of our ability.
No, and those are certainly important topics. Obviously, anyone who's been in Sachem for a number of years knows the financial struggles that we've gone through. Ms. Hines and I are only with the district the past 4 years. I joined the district in July of 2016. Unfortunately, that goes back to the days where we had that $16,000 in unassigned fund balance. Luckily, over the last 4 years, through the prudence of the board, decisions that were made, we've been able to start to rebuild the district's financial position, getting us in a much better place. But literally, for decades, things were not attended to, unfortunately, because of the district's position. The gap elimination adjustment was devastating to Sachem. Not only did it cause us to spend down our reserves, but we didn't spend in our infrastructure. Sachem does not have Wi-Fi. When we joined the district just 4 years ago, there were almost no laptops at all in the district, period. Classrooms may have 1, 2, 3 old desktops on a counter or a table at the back of the room, but that's all there was, computing-wise. Building might have had a computer lab, but again, those devices were antiquated at best. We've made tremendous strides in the last 4 years, and we've purchased well over 4,000 devices. But in a district of over 12,000 students, that doesn't even remotely get us close. And the other challenges we're having, and if you've been in board presentations for the last few years, you know that the district paused because of its financial position on smart schools. So several years ago, the state had a bond referendum, which was passed to invest $2 billion in public schools, and Sachem got an $11 million allocation. It's not that we received $11 million. We were given the authority to develop a plan and submit that plan for authorization to spend it. But then it was up to us to fund the $11 million, to buy the items or do the upgrades in order to get the money back over time. We didn't have $11 million. That money just did not exist. So that in the last few years, we were able to invest some of the money that was earmarked for the smart schools in installing the security vestibules. Those were completed last year. Obviously, they've been a fantastic addition to the buildings. And currently with the crisis, it's even a better tool to help isolate the building from visitors. The next phase of that upgrade is spending about $8 million on completely rewiring the entire district for Wi-Fi, all new cabling, new servers, new switches, new closets, technical things that I'm not an expert at, but we don't have the technical expertise in our classrooms. We do have smart boards now, luckily, in every classroom, and we're actually in a phase where we're starting to replace the older ones with more modern LED screens, but we paused that right now for this year just because we don't know what else we're going to need resource-wise to get us through the year. You probably realize we haven't gotten our state aid numbers yet. The governor is still talking of a potential of up to 20% cuts, and every decision we make has to realize that that could be 17, it could be 25 million, depending upon what 20% state aid cut is, whether it's all aid or just part of our aid. So we're very cautious and mindful about that as well. But we're doing our best to improve technology. As Ms. Hines said, we ordered about $250,000 worth of Chromebooks. Unfortunately, though, based on the fact that most devices and most electronics do come out of Asia, we're hearing that it might take as long as until November. So we may not have those devices for a while. And while, yes, we do have several thousand laptops in our buildings, I'm hesitant to take those laptops and distribute them because then the students in the buildings wouldn't have them. So that's why our priority was, let's first identify families that have no technology. And I think we've reached all of those at this point. Certainly, we're going to survey those families again. And if there is a shortage or a need, we'll do what's necessary to get a device in that child's hand so that they have it available for learning. Internet-wise, I know some of the providers did offer free internet for a while. That unfortunately stopped. But as Ms. Hines said, BOCES is working with us, and hopefully they'll be able to develop something for those families that don't have access to internet. So I just wanted to give you an update on that lens as well. Certainly, if you drive around the district, there's a lot of construction going on, a lot of projects that are finally underway. Also just keep in mind that work done on capital projects is money that's specifically earmarked through the budget process, through a capital line, which is a component of your tax levy. If I was not to do those projects, I can't take those monies and move them elsewhere within the budget to, say, fund additional computers or things of that nature. So I know I've spoken to a lot of you at different budget hearings and meetings, and always feel free to reach out. But certain monies have to be earmarked for certain things. So just pulling back on doing a capital project doesn't give me more money to buy more computers. Certainly, we keep making those adjustments within the budget, and we're remaining mindful of our deficits and hoping to improve upon them. Did you have any other thoughts, Ms. Hines?
Just about the social and emotional needs of our students and our staff. I don't think we really touched on this tonight. And I know that we talked about it at our Board of Education meeting, but through our survey results and just general emails and conversations that our mental health staff has been having and we've been having as a team, please know that we are set up and supporting ourselves to ensure that we are working with our students and our staff proactively, and also for any interventions that are in place. But I think it's a really good time right now because, as Mr. O'Keefe has said, I think everybody out there, and we don't need to keep saying it to you, but everyone here in Sachem is working as hard as they can to provide a safe and healthy return for your students and certainly for our staff. And no matter what happens, I think everybody also knows that we are full of caring and loving teaching and administrative staff, clerical, food service, bus workers. Everybody here, you name it, is really here for your child. And so even though it may not look perfect, even though there may be some days where there will be bumps in the roads, we will get through it and we will get to the other side. And I always think back to what the children will think. And we are our best models for what it is that we can do for our students. And if we feel that stress, if we share that stress, they certainly will feel it and hear it as well. So this is an opportunity for us to just take pause and think about those resiliency skills that we want to model for our students. And again, as we've said, each and every time that we've presented, that we've shared a plan, anything, if there's any questions you have, if there's something that you truly feel upset about, or you think that we didn't share or we did not encourage or involve as many people, just let us know. We're happy to, again, always revisit, as we've been doing this week, to ensure that the community and all of the, any of the issues that were something that had popped up that we tried to address for you. But thank you so much, Sachem, for joining us tonight. We hope that tonight's evening afforded you some clearer answers to some of the questions that you have. And again, just look out for those FAQs that we'll be sending, certainly updated from the district level, and then we'll be providing from each of our building levels as well.
And myself as well. Thank you very much for joining us. Again, my apologies. This is not the mechanism that I'd want to deliver this type of news or have this type of conversation. Certainly any important matter deserves to be discussed in public. And unfortunately, we just don't have that opportunity. So for that, I'm deeply sorry. I mean, it must be difficult. I'm just imagining you sitting home watching the screen. Maybe some of you are even yelling at it at the point. But it's the same struggles your children are having during remote learning. They're watching a feed and they can't necessarily interact. And it's not the best model. So I just thank you for your patience. I appreciate your support. I do enjoy reading each of the emails. There's a lot of frustration. There's a lot of anger. There's a lot of angst. There's nothing wrong with it. We've heard it. We do get it. We have the same feelings. Unfortunately, we have to keep, pushing forward and finding a way to open schools and do it safely. You certainly have a difficult decision as parents, determining, what is best for you and your family. I don't envy you in that position. I don't have all the answers. in my particular profession, as your business official, I like to be the person who has the answers. It troubles me that I don't have all the answers. And even the best experts in the room, we get differing opinions. So we're doing the best we can with the information that we have. So again, thank you very much for joining us this evening, and we look forward to seeing you all again soon. Thank you.
Can I teach them?
Good night.